Hi guys, Shanika here from Multispective, and I'm here to share with you a new episode. I interview Daniel, who talks in great detail about his childhood, a very unhappy childhood, and his career path being a DJ later on in his life led to the indulgence and overindulgence of alcohol. He talks about his addiction with alcohol and how one car crash turned his entire life around and began his journey of recovery. So through the process of recovering and healing, he had to make several changes in his life to clear his pathways. And one of the things that he did was tried ayahuasca.
They refer to ayahuasca as madre ayahuasca. You know, it has a very feminine energy to it, a very feminine intelligence. And you meet that energy, that entity in the experience.
He talks in great detail about his ayahuasca experience, the retreat, what you can expect going into it, if this is something that you would ever want to try. He talks about things like synchronicity. He talks about things like finding your purpose and finding your inner self. Do listen, hit the like button. Please drop a comment letting us know what you think, because every comment will help us to do a better job for you. So I hope you really enjoy this episode. Start from the very, very beginning. Can you tell me a little bit about your childhood? Like, where are you from? And yeah.
Sure, yeah. I was born in 1992 in West Covina, California. It's about 30 minutes east of Los Angeles. I grew up in San Gabriel, same kind of area. I lived in San Gabriel till I was 8 years old, and then I moved to a city called San Dimas, California, a little further east. And that's where I spent a majority of my life, you know, into high school and everything. And then after graduating high school, I went to the community college in the area, and then I transferred from the community college to the university. And so now I live in Pomona, still in the general area. And so I've been living in Pomona now for quite some time, but I'm actually getting a lot of signs lately. I think I'm going to end up moving to Florida here pretty soon. So we'll see what happens.
Wow, signs. Talk to me about that a little bit.
Yeah, I'm not sure are you familiar with synchronicities?
A little bit, yeah.
For the listeners who are unfamiliar with this concept of synchronicities, a synchronicity is essentially signs, you know, if you want to call it like signs from your guardian angel, your spirit guides, the universe. You know, a lot of people are familiar with, like, you know, the angel numbers, like 1111, you know, they look at the clock and they see, but it goes even beyond that. And my whole life has been synchronicities. It's always been signs. As a kid, it would be like a word would come up, and then I would just hear that word over and over, like it would be on the TV, like a commercial, or on the radio. I would hear it, and it would just be so obvious, and it would be repeating, and then it would make me like either research something or pursue something. And as a kid, I was always well aware of them, and I didn't know what they were. I just always thought they were like telling me that I was on the right path in life. And it wasn't until about 7 or 8 years ago, I was watching a YouTube video of this spiritual guy, and he was talking about this concept of synchronicities. And I was like, oh, okay, so yeah, like that's what I've been having my whole life. And so essentially my whole life has been these signs, like I said, from whatever you want to call it, the universe, my spirit guides, my higher self, whatever you want to call it. And I follow those signs, and it usually leads me to where I need to go. And so lately I've been getting a lot of signs about Florida, a lot of them. Like it's hard to deny. And so I think that's going to be my next chapter out in Florida.
Hi, I'm Rachelle Smith, host of Silence Voices, Stories of MST. MST stands for Military Sexual Trauma. The goal of this podcast and this YouTube channel is to empower survivors of MST, like you, with resources, community, and better access to healing. In this podcast, you'll hear stories of pain and trauma.
I sat down next to some people and I was like, hey, I'm not trying to cause any drama, but he's really creeping me out.
So it makes me angry because my life has been forever changed, and his life has flourished.
It was horrible. It was even worse. I was just so much excluded, and just, it wasn't as bad as the assault itself, but the way I was treated, and the way I was just ostracized and outcast, and I felt like nobody cared about me. I was just someone expendable.
As well as stories of triumph and resilience.
I hope that you've changed, and I don't wish you any harm.
So when you overcome something like this
and you're able to make something good out of it, it starts giving you back your identity and your courage, confidence.
In this podcast, you'll hear survivor stories, get shared resources, and learn healthy coping skills that have helped other survivors get to healing. If I've described you in this video and you're struggling to get your mental health stable, please subscribe to this channel. I would love nothing more than to be a part of your healing journey.
I feel like it's one of those things where it's just like a select few people who actually are able to pick up on those signs and like hear those, you know, or notice those synchronicities around them and actually like act on it, because, you know, it's like a little, these signs are so subtle that a lot of people tend to miss it. And so I would love to go a little bit more into that. But I think before we get there, I still want to know a little bit more about your childhood. Because I do believe that a lot of people that are able to see those signs, and then I've spoken to some people, some guests in the past who've talked about this, it was all about like listening to their gut and having that ability to listen to that gut voice, and pay attention to it. And I think it's one of those things that just, it kind of gets lost on us as we age, because we start to hear other voices. We hear the voices of social media, families, people around us, that we lose that sense of like, what is my body, my gut telling me? So I kind of want to know what led to that point for you. Like in your childhood, was it something that was encouraged by your parents? Was it discouraged? How did you get to this place?
Yeah, that's interesting. That's a good question. Looking back on my life, I would definitely say that my dad definitely brought me up on this quote, and I still remember it to this day. Like, I'll always remember it. Basically, this quote was, don't believe anything you hear and only half of what you see. For some reason, he would always tell me that quote, like, don't believe anything you hear and only half of what you see. So always be skeptical, always ask questions. And so I think that maybe that played a factor. Also, you know, I didn't grow up very religious at all. You know, my parents didn't push religion on me or push anything on me, really. They kind of just let me be who I am and find things on my own. Maybe that's why.
Right. Did you have a good relationship with your parents overall?
Yeah. You know, there's been some, you know, speed bumps here and there. It's been tough at times. You know, my father was an alcoholic, you know, and so that definitely caused a lot of strain on the family, you know, but he's been sober now, and you know, he's a good guy. He means well, but he's had a rough childhood and he had a rough life, and so I see why he is the way that he is. But overall, the relationship is good.
I know that you had some speed bumps of your own. Can you talk to me a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So I think it started, you know, like I said, as a kid, I was always very sensitive. I've just always been a very sensitive kid, and, you know, just things were always loud, and people, you know, just life just seemed very loud. I was just very sensitive, and I always felt different. I always felt, you know, just different. I don't know how to describe it, just different. And I know in high school, those are like pivotal years as like a teenager. Like, you want to be cool and you want to fit in, and so freshman year, actually like summer after 8th grade, I started to go down the wrong path. You know, I started smoking weed, started drinking alcohol, started hanging around the party people, started going to parties and raves and all that, and that's, you know, looking back on my life, like that's such a pivotal point in time to develop and mature as an adult. But I became that because I wanted to be cool and I wanted to fit in. I remember I would always look at the popular kids at school, and I would look at them across the campus, and I was like, man, I want to be them so bad. And so I knew that was a way for me to get in with them. And so I just started to do that whole thing. And I think in reality, it was kind of a blessing in disguise, because I think it helped me get that out of my system. You know, I think, you know, I have a friend, for example, he didn't start drinking until he was like 21 or something. And I think that he's kind of considered a late bloomer, at least over here in American society. And so he's in that path, and he's in his 30s, you know. And so I feel like I kind of got it out of my system by doing it a little earlier. So I don't know. I feel like there's pros and cons to each, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I guess it's one of those things that sort of like maybe is important for that spiritual sort of like awakening in a sense, right? You have to kind of go through some like maybe blocking of it, like rejection of it, for you to come out the other side, right?
Yeah.
Because it's sort of like a little taster of what life can be, what the temptations can be. And like, do we have it in us? Do you have it in you to be able to like, overcome that and see the other side and come out wiser? Because again, like, either it's one of those things that takes you down this wrong path and, kind of kills you, or it's one of those things that, makes you stronger. Right. Yeah. No, that's really interesting. Okay. So at what point did you start really picking up on those signs and following those signs as opposed to, trying to block it out?
Yeah. I think, like I said, as a kid, I always noticed them and I would always pursue different things. But I think it wasn't until, let's see here, essentially like a couple years ago, about 3-4 years ago in my 20s, I became friends with this guy, and my drinking, you are who you hang out with, so my drinking really and my partying really got out of hand. But there were certain situations that happened in my mid to late 20s just where it was like, man, like I said, I don't know, how do you want to describe it? Was it my guardian angels, my spirit guides? It was just like I was throwing a lot of different things, pain and suffering and setbacks and just all these different things where it really put me in a dark place. And I was just in this dark place where, I had all this financial debt. I guess I'll tell the story of what happened. Essentially, I went to it was during the pandemic, actually. There was no events going on, and there was these raves that would happen out in the desert, out here in LA, like out in the desert. Like that's one of the only spots where you could go and party still, when things were on lockdown. And we were coming out of the lockdown, and so we went to this desert rave, and the plan was that we were going to camp out and stay out there, and there was a whole group of us friends that went, and that was the plan, right? And so I started drinking. I was like, all right, I'm not going to drive, so I'm good to get drunk, and next thing I know, the one guy in the group was like, oh, like, let's leave, let's get out of here. And everybody wanted to leave. And I was like, what? Like, I can't drive. Like, I've been drinking. We had a plan. We were supposed to stay here and camp out and all that. And then next thing I know, everybody wanted to leave. And my friend looked at me and he was like, I'm good to drive. I'll drive your car. And I looked at him and I was like, are you sure? He's like, yeah, I'm good, dude. I only had a couple or whatever. And I let him drive my car. And I passed out in my passenger seat. And all I remember, man, is waking up on the freeway. He crashed my car into the center divider on the freeway, and the airbags were off. I wake up and the airbags are off, and I'm like, what? Like, what happened? He's all frantic and he's apologizing, and I told him just go, just get out of here, because I didn't want him to get a DUI. And so it was a very traumatic experience, and it really made me have to hold myself accountable, because I know he was driving, but no, it's like I drove there like I should have been driving. And so it really made me change, man. Like after that, it just, and then it was like, a lot of financial debt, because I had enough money saved up to get a used car, and then that one broke down on me after a week. Literally, I had that car for a week, and I was driving down the street and the wheel fell off and I almost crashed. And it was just like I said, it was just, and then after that, another car, and then it was just like over and over. And so like it really put me in a dark place, and it really made me have to examine myself and the decisions that I was making and how I was behaving as an adult. And after that, I said, you know what, I can't drink anymore. Like it's too, the pros, I mean, the cons outweigh the pros with this. It's just like you need to grow up. You know what I mean? And so I literally just, I cut out a lot of people out of my life, and I just had to be alone. And I started going to therapy, actually, to kind of like find the root cause of why was I drinking. What. And that's the thing. A lot of people don't even think about these things. Like people just do it, But I was actually like trying to get to the root core of it, the root cause of it. And so I started to go to therapy. And after I saw a couple of hypnotherapists, and after I went to therapy, it led me to an ayahuasca retreat. And that was just like the really pivotal moment, like, of my life story, where man, it was a blessing, man. Like I'm such a different, I'm the person that I was always meant to be, and it really changed my life. I found that's where my spiritual awakening took off. I found my spirituality, and, I just have such a different perspective on life, and I really want to, share. I know these are kind of dark stories to talk about, but I just want to share this story because I know there's other people out there that can relate, and, I want them to know that they're not alone, and I want them to know that I came out of that darkness and I found the light. And so I want to help people come out of that darkness as well, and just tell my story and spread some of these spirituality concepts and that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And really drive things forward.
Wow, I love that. There's so many facets to your story. I mean, again, it's one of those, you think you hit rock bottom until you hit a lower place, and you're like, holy, this is rock bottom, and now I need to start picking up the pieces. Like, I have no other way out of this. Like, I'm at my lowest point financially, I'm at my lowest point emotionally, I'm at my lowest point physically, mentally, in every possible way.
Everything.
And in a sense, you kind of feel like you've lost yourself in the humdrum of like life, right? And it took an accident like this for everything to sort of like turn for you. You mentioned that your friend, you told your friend to like leave the scene before so that he wouldn't get a DUI. So what happened then? Like at that point, what happened with the DUI?
So that was a very traumatic experience. It's like I told him to take off, and we were driving, and the airbags are off, and we had to drop the one girl that was with us, and she was in the back seat, and like she was passed out. It was just a very traumatic experience. So we took off, and I was like, all right, let's just get her home, drop her off, and then let's go meet up at my friend's house, get the car over there. But for some reason, once we dropped her off, the car wouldn't drive anymore. It wouldn't steer. So we were like, it wouldn't steer anymore. So then we're like, what do we do? And we just left it in the street. We left the car in the street because it wouldn't drive anymore. And I was like, man, I don't know what to do, And so we just left it, And I said I'd figure it out in the morning, And I just, this is not a proud moment of my life, But I reported it stolen, and try to, just get out of it, So, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so intense. In a way, I kind of understand because like your line of work as well required you to be in like parties. I mean, as far as I know, you're a DJ as well. So, it can be really, really hard stepping away from that kind of lifestyle when it's your life, like your earnings, right? Your main income. Yeah. So how, and I, as far as I know, you still are in this business, in the music industry and in like DJing. How do you, avoid, like spiraling into that world?
Well,
again?
yeah, actually it's not my main income. No, it's a side project, I have a career, and I work in marketing, and but yeah, definitely the DJ is a passion. It's a deep passion, as well as the podcast. But yeah, definitely it's gotten a lot difficult, being in those environments, around those people and around alcohol and all that. So, I just, what I do now is I just get a mocktail, and I pretend like I'm, fitting in with everyone else, and it works, it really works. And yeah, so that's kind of what I do now.
Wow, that's amazing. Okay, so like walk me through this therapy that you started going to. What was it that, I know that you were probably feeling like you were at your lowest point and you were losing yourself, and you decided to go into therapy. What were some of the revelations that you had when you were there?
Yeah, like I didn't do just therapy, actually. I did hypnotherapy. And for the listeners out there, I really recommend, if you're looking into doing therapy, excuse me one second. Yeah, if you're really looking into doing therapy, I really recommend hypnotherapy, because it really gets to the core of the problem. We have our conscious mind and our subconscious mind. And so therapy, I don't want to completely knock therapy. It's good. You can talk about your problems and all that. But I also feel like it kind of keeps you stuck, because you just keep talking about your problems over and over, and it just kind of keeps you stuck. But with hypnotherapy, they actually put you under hypnosis, and it opens your subconscious mind, and the practitioner, kind of whatever it is that you want to work on, plants in these new thoughts and these new ideas, and then kind of closes it back up. And then so the next thing you know, you just start figuring out all the answers, and you're just living your life with these new. The way I see it, the brain is almost like a computer, so it's almost like getting new software, or like a software update. Right. And so then you go about your life with these new updates and this new program and this new software, and yeah, so that's kind of, I would really recommend hypnotherapy.
Yeah. What were some of the things that the therapist was sort of like planting in your head at the time that you felt were really, really life-changing?
Oh, you cut out again. Oh, there you go. Yeah, some of the things that we discussed, I don't know, it was just, I was very sensitive. It all stemmed from me drinking at a young age, 14 years old. I never learned how to, to socialize without it. Like, I always relied on it. It was like a social lubricant. And yeah, so a lot of my problems just stemmed from doing it at an early age, where I didn't allow my brain to fully develop and learn how to navigate this world as a normal functioning adult. Like I was always relying on that, and so that was a big problem, that for sure. And I think, my father being an alcoholic definitely played a role in it, and different things as a kid, and that kind of a thing.
Yeah. So what then led you to ayahuasca? Like, how did you get introduced to that?
I think, I watch a lot of podcasts, and, Joe Rogan has definitely been a big proponent for it. And I started hearing a lot about it more and more. I think we're all aware of it now. It's a big topic right now. And so like I said, with the synchronicities and the signs, it was like hypnotherapy really, it kind of gave me I feel like a 10% boost in like becoming a better version of myself. But I still felt like I could do more and I could be more. And actually, I started to find in my research, that trauma is stored in your DNA. It's stored in your body. Like, we have an energetic body. And so I knew that I've always been a believer in energy and frequency. And I knew that I actually gained a lot of weight, because in that dark place, like I cut all these people out, and I wasn't drinking anymore. So I was kind of like alone, I was in a dark place. And so I kind of substituted alcohol with eating, and I started to eat a little bit too much, and I gained quite a little bit of weight. And that, as well as just harboring all these negative emotions and resentment, people who wronged me, just all this hurt and pain that I've had in my life, I noticed that it was stuck in my gut. And so a combination of that with finding out that trauma is passed down into your DNA. So my dad passed down his trauma onto me. And so I had all this, stuck energy. And so that's when I started to look into energy work, and I found that ayahuasca was kind of what I was looking for. And so I decided to give it a try, and it was such a profound experience, man, because I literally, there's this concept in the ayahuasca experience, in the retreat, in the ceremony, they call it purging. And so you start purging, and you literally, they see it as a good thing. You start throwing up. And I literally was purging, and I was throwing up all this toxic energy that was that I was harboring inside of my stomach. I literally felt it all coming out. And it was almost like, after you threw up, like it almost felt like you were high, like you just felt like, oh my God, like I released all this negative energy that I've been holding on to. Like, how many people go about their lives and they have resentment towards their husband, their wife, their parents, family, friends, and they just hold on to it, and they're just like an angry person, and they don't know why. It's because they're holding on to all that. And so in the ayahuasca ceremony, I threw up a lot, and it was all coming out, all of that negativity, all that toxicness, the trauma of my life, the trauma that was passed down onto me, it all came out. And yeah, it was just very profound.
Wow. No, that's crazy. It's like as you're vomiting, as you're throwing up, you're actually that physical feeling of that physical release of all of the pain that you felt stuck, right?
Yeah.
And then sort of seeing the other side, seeing the light right after that.
Yeah.
Did you ever have is it possible to have a bad trip on this? Did you ever?
Yeah, it's definitely, so I would say, when it comes to psychedelics, plant medicines, I know, especially over here in the Western world and other parts of the world, there's such a negative view and a negative stigma on psychedelics, and I want to be a proponent for them. I think, they're medicines, they're natural. I think obviously anything in moderation, you want to be responsible for it, and you want to have respect for the medicine. But yeah, you could have a bad experience. So they're always talking about your set and your setting. So you want to be in a good mindset, and you want to be in a good setting around the right people, the right environment, that kind of a thing.
Where did you do it? Did you do it at the Amazon, or was it somewhere else?
No, that's my next dream trip, is I want to go to the Amazon and do it authentically. I actually just did it in California on a ranch out here near Palm Springs. But the shaman who was doing it, who was leading it, he is from the Amazon. He's from Colombia. He's from a tribe called in Putumayo, Colombia. And so, yeah, it was a legitimate shaman. So, yeah.
That's crazy. And was it like a group sort of session? Were there quite a few people there together?
Yeah, there was I would say about 40 people, and it was really such a beautiful experience, man. It was so life changing. Like everybody that was there, like we were all just doing this healing work on ourselves, and like I said, we're holding ourselves accountable. Like we all have problems in life, and in life, there's a certain card, a certain hand that you're dealt in life, and that's just the life that you've been given, and it's you got to make the best of it. Some have it easier than others, you know what I mean? But it was just a really beautiful and magical experience because we all were holding ourselves accountable. We were there to fix ourselves and to heal ourselves, and like I said, there's a lot of people who've been through some traumatic things in this life, and that is one way that I've found to heal yourself of these traumatic energies that we're holding on to. So yeah, it was a very magical, beautiful experience. We were all hugging each other, and just, I remember actually, a funny story. I remember there was a introductory call that was it was on Zoom before we all meet to go to the retreat. It was on Zoom, and you're looking at all the people on the Zoom call, and man, like I was looking at some of those people, and you could tell, like, man, they've been through some stuff in their life. You could see it on their face, like they're in a dark place. And there was one girl specifically, I remember looking at her on the Zoom and just, man, I don't know what she went through in her life, but she was in a dark place, and it was so amazing. It was so beautiful. Like I remember that girl that I saw on that introduction call, how in a dark place she was at the end of the retreat, looking at her, big smile on her face. She just was a completely different person, and it was very beautiful.
Wow. Talk to me about like the step by step as to like how does it work? So you start off with a Zoom call, and then right after that you meet, like everyone meets in the ranch, and what happens there? Is there like a sort of little bit of like a talk as to like what you can expect from this, and how does it work?
Yeah, so every organization will be a little bit different, but for this specific organization, there's a screening process, there's an application, like you have to apply. You can't, not anybody can just go. Like you have to apply and answer these certain questions and be honest, about where you're at and what experience you have and that kind of a thing. And then they'll either approve you or deny you. Like if you're on, some kind of medications that won't act well with the medicine, or maybe you've been in and out of like a psych ward or something, they'll probably reject you for that. But if you're just like, a person with some regular issues, some regular trauma, and I think another thing that they look for is that maybe you've had a little bit of experience with psychedelics, like maybe you've done a little bit of mushrooms or something, because it is a psychedelic kind of experience. And so I think that is something that they were looking for as well, because if you go into this is like on the next level. This is like the most intense psychedelic trip, journey, experience, whatever you want to call it. So if you go from not having it at all to that, then you could have a bad time, and you might not understand what is going on. But yeah, so for me, I've had a few experiences with like psilocybin mushrooms, and so I got approved, and but yeah, and then there's the introduction call, and everyone's getting to know each other, and they're kind of explaining to you, what's gonna happen over the course of these next 3 days when you meet at the retreat. And also there's a diet that you have to participate in leading up to the ceremony. I think, what was it? I'm trying to remember the diet. So for 2 weeks, drink lots of water. I think a week leading up to it, like you have to cut out meat. So like no meat, you have to be vegan. There's different things like no alcohol, no drugs, no sex. And it's just basically like building up your energy, so you're like in a really positive energy, ready to go into that experience.
Oh, that's really interesting. I did not know that.
Yeah.
And I would imagine like that also being sort of like a spiritual sort of, it's bringing you closer to like yourself, right? Like being in touch with yourself. The more you like, it kind of goes back to like even Buddhism, right? In Buddhism, they talk about like removing all materialistic things, all temptations, and sort of just like really being in tune with yourself. Like the more you minimalize, the closer you can be to your own thoughts and your own understanding. So I can see how that makes sense. And especially because, again, the intention of this is not just, for entertainment, but it's actually for, having some cathartic, release, right?
That's actually a good thing that you brought up there. So it's the intention behind it. So if you apply to go and you're like, oh, like I just want to experience it, I just want to have fun, and I'm on a spiritual journey and I just want to, you're in it for the wrong reasons. Like they approve people. It's like for example, it was like I told him, I was like, I've been overcoming sobriety, I've been going to therapy, I've been working on myself, and there was an intention behind it. I was explaining about how I felt like I was harboring all these negative emotions in my gut, and how I really wanted to heal myself and the trauma that was passed down to me. So those are the kinds of people that they're going to approve. Like you said, there needs to be an intention behind it. And like I said earlier, as well as the set and the setting, having a respect for these plant medicines, because there needs to be an intention. If you want to just take them and like it's a party and it's just for fun, no, that's doing it in the wrong manner. Like there needs to be an intention behind it, the respect for it, and when you have that intention and that respect for it, it's really going to give you what you're looking for.
I like that. So when you get there, you said it's 3 days over there. Do you go right into it, or is there some sort of like cleansing medicine that you take before you get onto it? Like, how does that work? Yeah.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Yeah. So you mentioned that it's a 3-day journey. So you arrive at the place. Is there any sort of like pre-cleansing medicine that you take beforehand, or do you just sort of like get right into it?
That's a good question. Yeah, there's different things that they do. It was a lot of energetic work. So when we got there, I remember they gave you like a journal, and so you're writing your journal, kind of like, how you're feeling, what you want to get out of the experience. After that, then it was kind of like, once again, they were describing of how it's gonna be over the course of these 3 days, and then there was a breathwork session, and that breathwork session was the start of it. That was amazing. I'm not sure if you've ever done breathwork, but like we go throughout our life with such a shallow breath. Like, how often do we take the time to really breathe, And so I think it was about 30 minutes. We all laid there, and it was a guided breathwork session, and it was just like in, out, like really cathartic, really heavy, like letting out sighs and like really getting the energy flowing. And I remember at the end of it, my arms were vibrating. Like I was literally vibrating. I was like, wow. Like, so there was a breathwork session, and then, then the shaman came in, and you see him and you're like, wow, like there's the shaman. Like this guy knows his stuff, and he walks in and he has the brew, he has the medicine, he sets everything up on the altar, they're lighting candles, fire, and let's see what else happened. That was mainly it. There was like smudging. So, and sage, like they would burn sage, and there was smudging. They would go around the room and kind of blow this sage and the smudge on you to kind of clear your energy.
Oh, interesting. Very, very interesting. Are these sages qualified? Do they have some kind of like psychology degree or counseling? Like what kind of qualifications are required from the shamans?
The shaman, he's from the Amazon. His lineage, it's been passed down like through his lineage. His father, his grandfather, they're all shamans, and so it's an ancient tradition for thousands of years, been passed down in his lineage, and so he's been practicing shamanism. I think. See, how old he was about 40, and I think they said he was doing it since he was 16. So he's got like 24 years of experience. And then there is, licensed, medical practitioners on site. The one lady that was really helping out, she was was a psychologist and a doctor. And so, yeah, they definitely have quite a handful of qualified, licensed people there to help guide the experience.
Right. And so as you've had this ayahuasca, you've had your first sip of it. Is it almost like instant when this hallucinational experience happens, or is it one of those things that takes a bit of time? Are you guys having conversations during that period? Are you talking about your life and your traumas, or are you talking about like healing and revelations? Like what's happening?
Yeah, that's a good question. So yeah, they call you up to the altar. And so you all get in line and you go up to the altar, and the shaman is just pouring the brew in the cup, and you go one by one up to him. And the interesting part is he literally looks you in your eyes, and then he determines how much to pour you. Like they say the eyes are the window to the soul, right? Like he looks you in your eyes, and he can tell, like, oh, this person needs a little bit more, this one needs a little bit less, you know. And so yeah, it was very interesting. So it's like you look him in the eyes, and then he pours it, and then he gives it to you. And he's also doing blessings over it and all that. And so, and then you take it, and it's a what do you call it? It's an introspective kind of experience. So you take it, and it was a dark room with like a fire going. And so you go and lay down on your mat, and you're just supposed to lay down and just let it do its thing, you know. And it's going to be different for each individual. Whatever each individual needs, it's going to meet them where they are. And they refer to ayahuasca as the grandmother spirit, or madre ayahuasca. You know, it has a very feminine energy to it, a very feminine intelligence, and you kind of meet that, you know, and you meet that energy, that entity, you know, whatever you want to call it, in the experience. And so for me, on the first night, I didn't really feel much, but that's I purged. You know, I did a lot of you know, purging, you know, throwing up, and so that was on the first night. And then I think on the second night is when it got more intense. Funny story on that one, actually. He was going around the room. And I was trying to take it easy on the second. I was like, second night, I was going to take just one cup. And so I was going to try and blend in with everybody else and just sit there and blend in. I was scared, I guess. But on the second night, he was walking around the room, and he stopped at me, and he looks at me. He literally looked at me. He's like, "You go up to the altar." And I looked at him, and I was like, "Do I have to?" And he was like, "I'm not asking you, I'm telling you." And I was like, "All right." So then I got up, and it's like he knew that I needed a second cup, and sure enough, he was right. I took that second cup, and that's where I had the breakthrough. That's where a lot of the healing and revelations I had, and you know, it was so profound, such a profound experience. And you know, I'll just say, you know, I had an experience of dying, you know, and they talk about it. It's like they say, when you have that feeling, surrender and just go towards it. And I just let it happen, you know, and it put me in a fetal position. It put me in a fetal position, and I was like, oh, I'm dying, like I'm having an experience of dying. But they refer to it as like an ego death. And so I had that experience, and then it was like like I said, I really see the brain as almost like a computer. It was like it shut down, and I was like, oh, like I just died, you know. But my consciousness was still there, and it was like, okay, like what's gonna happen next? And it was almost like one of those old TVs, you know, how the old TV, when you turn it off, is like, it was like it turned off my consciousness or whatever, and then it was like, and then it like rebooted, and I was like back, and I was like, oh my god, like thank you, I'm back. And then there was a specific experience on the third day when that kind of happened, and I was laying on the grass, and it was like I came back, and it was like I knew that I healed myself, and I came back, and I remember just the birds were chirping, and I was looking at the trees and the sky and the sun. And you know, like I said, I feel like we go throughout life, like we forget to appreciate the simple things. And so just the simple things, like the birds chirping in the trees and the sun and the wind. And so I remember kind of waking up, and I was like, the birds were chirping, and it was like I was back, you know. I was like, just have so much more respect for life and so much more appreciation for life.
Oh my God, that's crazy. I feel like this is one of those things that like everyone needs to sort of have. And it's one of those things that like, it's unfortunate because it's such a personal journey. So science has had a very difficult time being able to like prove this, right? But it doesn't mean that it's not true, especially if there's like enough people out there who've been able to like vouch for this kind of stuff or have had similar sort of experiences. I love that you talked about how you sort of like switched off and then switched on. How, like, can you tell me like what were the things? It's really hard, like the concept of like time and space and like what we see. Were you able to still see yourself in a physical sense, or were you sort of like in a totally different place? Like, did you see the universe? Like, what were the things that you were able to see in that moment?
Yeah. So like I said, it definitely is an introspective journey. It was like a closed eye, you know, internal journey. And so my eyes were closed, and I was in another dimension, whatever you want to call it. Like I was there. It was intense colors and geometrical patterns. And I was seeing, like I said, they refer to her as grandmother, madre ayahuasca. And I was seeing the spirit, the energy, and she was moving and she was vibrating. And as she was doing that, it was like my body, like my nervous system was like twitching, and it was almost like I said, it's like we're like a computer. It was like reset. It was like a reboot. You know how sometimes you need to reboot your phone or you need to reboot your computer. It was kind of like it was like that. It was like she was rebooting me. Like I lived 30 years of my life, you know, and I haven't had any software updates. I haven't been rebooted, and so it was kind of like that experience of being rebooted, I would describe. But yeah, it was definitely it was internal. It was very intense colors and patterns, and it was so profound, and I almost felt like it felt more real than this world feels. This world to me kind of feels kind of like an illusion sometimes, but that place that I was in, like I literally feel like we are a soul living a human experience, you know. And so I feel like my soul, you know, was in the afterlife or whatever you want to call it, and it was like, and then I came back, you know. It was very profound.
That's crazy. That is just so crazy. Wow. How long is each ayahuasca experience? When you take it one time, does it last for a couple of hours?
Yeah, it's about a 6-hour journey.
Wow. I'm just like, I can't help but like think though, like if somebody was having a bad experience, it would be like a 6-hour long, extreme, horrible experience. Were there anyone over there having a bad experience?
Yeah, you know, you could hear people going through their experiences, you know. I would hear people like crying, you know, but they're dealing with their trauma. They're facing it like, sorry, excuse me. Like I said, like we all, how many of us go throughout our lives and we don't face our shadow. We don't face the traumatic experiences. Like we just avoid it and we just numb ourselves with whatever. And so a lot of these people that were there, they were facing it. You know what I mean? You could hear them crying. And I remember one girl, like she was having such a good experience. It was funny. It was like we were laying there and I could hear her in the corner over there, and she was like, "Thank you, thank you." She just kept saying "thank you" over and over. And then I remember the one guy he was kind of an older gentleman, and he was I think he was like 70 years old, and he was there, and he was in a row in front of me, and he kept, when that girl kept saying "thank you, thank you," he was like, "Would you shut up already?" It was ruining his experience. She was having a great time, but for him it was like he wanted to like go within. Yeah. I was able to like, oh, that's fine. Like I can hear her having a good time. That's fine. Like that's great. But for him it was like, and then when he said that, it was funny. Like all of us just started laughing because we all heard that. It was hilarious.
That's crazy. Oh my God. It sounds like such a fun time as well though. Like I love that you were like having your own moment. You were in a different place, but yet you were still kind of there, present, like available to hear what was happening around you. And, you know, I guess also the shamans were communicating with you guys at several points and like maybe guiding the way to an extent. Like if anyone was having a bad trip or they were having a certain experience that shamans sort of wanted to like redirect. Is that true?
Yeah, definitely. You know, one of the facilitators, you know, he was kind of the shaman's kind of right-hand man. He would say things like, you know, it's okay to feel your feelings. Like people will be like confused and lost, like you know, they'll be like, why am I feeling? I don't know, like what's going on? And they'll go to you, and maybe they'll just they wouldn't even touch you or anything. Yeah, they would just be like, you know, they would come over to you gently and just, it's okay to feel your feelings, you know, and it just felt. Just a simple statement like that, like it just felt so profound, but they were so loving, you know. It was like we were all there to do the hard spiritual work on ourselves. We were like, the way I would describe it is like we were spiritual soldiers. We came to spiritual battle to like, you know, heal ourselves. And as soon as I threw up, like they would come and they were so caring, and they'd bring me another bucket, you know, and they'd bring me some napkins. So I was, you know, as soon as I did it, like they were ready, and it was just yeah, it was just a very loving environment, very compassionate environment, allowing people to face their shadows and allowing people to heal themselves, you know, because let's be honest here, like no one's going to heal you. Like you have to heal yourself, you know?
Yeah, you have to do that legwork by yourself. No, that's true. Okay, can you tell me, pre-ayahuasca, what was your definition of spirituality, and what's your definition of spirituality now?
Yeah, I mean, pre-ayahuasca, I was a completely different person, like, sure, I saw synchronicities, this and that, and I was open to the idea of God and spirit guides and guardian angels and all that. I was open to the idea, and I was always a spiritual kind of a person, but I was kind of lost, and to me, some of the concepts seemed kind of advanced and like, oh, they're crazy, they don't know what they're talking about. But after it's like, no, like, to me, spirituality is the truth. Like, this reality is an illusion. There's, we're constantly being lied to in the news and the media, and even things like alcohol. Like I said, alcohol. They call it spirit. Liquor they refer to as spirits in America. They do, at least, and it's kind of interesting when you think about it. Like, alcohol, it lowers your vibration, and it's so accepted in today's society. Like, it's so accepted, and I think alcohol is honestly the worst. But yeah, to answer your question, for spirituality, like, now I'm a firm believer in it. To me, it's the truth. Energy is real. You can't deny it. It has to do with a lot of energy work. And I definitely see spirituality as the truth.
I really like that. Yeah, no, I agree. I think that, like, alcohol definitely is an inhibitor. It's one of those things that's like a great distraction, and I think a lot of people feel such an intense feeling with alcohol, but in a way that they feel like it's the best way to block their traumas, because you can drink your pain away, right?
Exactly.
That's even a very common thing that people say. But the reality is that we shouldn't be trying to distract ourselves from it. We shouldn't be trying to block it. Rather, we should be listening to those traumas and using that as a sort of like, way to heal and understand ourselves a little bit better, because that trauma is a massive part of who we are. And while it's painful and it's difficult sometimes to listen to, it is the only way to redemption or, healing.
Yeah, right? I love that. I love that so much.
I'll tell you about this one time. I went for a yoga retreat, and like, it was consisting of like a lot of, yoga, meditation, stretches, all these kind of things. And it was like 3 days long. And I think throughout like the 3 days, I was doing the motions, right? I was doing what was being asked of me. We had like our coach that was the instructor that was instructing us to do this and do that. And I was, following it, but very much on a physical sense. And I was getting a little bit frustrated, because I was like, why am I not feeling the kind of thing that people around me are feeling? It was until the very last day. And that was like, we were about to leave at 12 o'clock, and we woken up at 6 to do a bit of a meditation, have breakfast, pack our stuff, and then bounce. And it was 6 o'clock in the morning. We're in this room. We're all sitting down doing our morning meditation. And it was, again, one of those like, doing this for the motion, it's just I'm not getting that. And it was there when I had my first real like moment. And so I'm in this meditation, and I just start sinking and sinking and sinking deeper into this place. And I think this was such a profound moment for me, because I had left my body. I was no longer who I was, but I was everything. I was nowhere, but I was everywhere. And I wasn't me in my physical sense. I was the essence of me. I don't know how to explain it, but I couldn't see me, but I could feel me. And I had just become this large sheet of like everything. I don't know how to explain it. It's really, really weird, but I feel like that was something that was really deep. It was like I was the universe in that very moment. And I remember, like, as she's guiding us and we're doing this chant, she's saying it, everyone, and I think it might have been the energy of the whole room, like everyone was in it. But when this session ended and everyone sort of like came back to, and they'd all gotten up to go for breakfast, I was still so deep in it. Like, I couldn't wake up from it. I did not know that what was happening was everyone had already gotten up and moved. So the instructor had actually like got up and came and sat next to me, and she could see me deep in this place. And I think it took like a good, 5-10 minutes. It felt like forever, but maybe like 5-10 minutes. And I finally like came to, and I remember feeling really dizzy. I was like, wait, where am I? What is this? Oh shit. And I was like touching myself like, okay, I'm here. I'm in the physical sense. I'm back on earth. And she was looking at me and she was like, I could see your eyeballs were like moving from side to side, like at a really fast pace. She was like, I could see you were somewhere and you were experiencing something. I didn't want to wake you up from this. Like, I just wanted you to go through that whole experience. But that was life-changing. And I've been chasing that since. And I haven't quite had that. And I'm like, how do I get there? Because that was like the closest place I could get to, I think, to seeing what it is that you experienced.
Wow, I love that so much. So it sounds like you had your own kind of a spiritual awakening, and yeah, I think nature is a great way. I'm always out in nature. I connect with nature. I put my bare feet in the ground. I let the sun hit my face. Nature is a great way. Yoga is fabulous. Breath work. Yeah, there's different ways to achieve, I would say, enlightenment or that awakening that you're looking for, and yeah, yoga is great. So I'm glad that you had that experience. It sounded awesome. You went deep.
Yeah. What do you do on a kind of day-to-day basis to sort of be in touch with that experience that you had?
Yeah, so I exercise, and I spend a lot of time in nature, meditating, grounding. Grounding is so important. I've found that human beings, we're actually very electrical. We're electrical beings, and so you need to go out in nature and ground that energy. Go, especially like me, I work in marketing. I'm always on the computer, or I'm on my phone, or I'm watching TV. How many of us live our lives like that? We're always on the computer, on our phone, watching Netflix. You need to go out in nature, man. Connect with nature and go put your bare feet in the ground and ground that energy. And yeah, so I spend a lot of time in nature. I do breath work and meditation, and meditation is great. I love meditation. Kind of helps calm the mind. If you're ever feeling stressed out or whatever, just go out in nature, close your eyes, and just meditate for 5-10 minutes or longer if you need to.
Yeah, no, I like that. And when you meditate, do you actually get to a different place, or or how often would you?
I think I do honestly struggle with meditation a little bit. I feel like as soon as I try, then I start thinking about things. So my mind is always, going to different thoughts or whatever, but I'm getting a little bit better with it. And I think, this might be weird, but I do actually spend a lot of time kind of talking to myself, or that's my form of meditation. I'll talk to myself or God or whatever, and I'm just expressing gratitude and sending thank you for this day, and sending my love out to my friends, my family, people out there in the world. So that's kind of my form of meditation, is just kind of talking to whatever God is. I feel like I have that connection now, and so I just that's my form of meditation.
That's really cool. Yeah, I love that. Can you tell me a little bit more about the synchronicities? Can you tell me about maybe some of the signs that you'd seen around you that made you realize, oh, this is something, rather than it just be, a subliminal whatever around you?
Yeah.
How did you know this was a sign? Yeah.
Yeah. So actually my podcast comes from a synchronicity. It was me and my friend, he calls me every day, and we would have these crazy, far out conversations where I love those kind of conversations like these, where we get real deep beyond the surface level. And we were having these crazy conversations. And I told him, I was like, dude, do you want to just start? I wanted to start a podcast. I was like, do you want to just let's just go on YouTube and record ourselves talking and put it up on YouTube. And then he's the kind of a guy where he says, oh yeah, I'm down. But he doesn't take action. So he kept saying oh yeah, I'm down to do it or whatever. But I had to do it on my own. And so I was it was on my mind, all right, I need to do a podcast. It's going to help me get more awareness to my music and everything. And so anyways, this word kept coming up, cryptic. And my DJ name is Tunez From The Crypt. And it would be on the TV. It would be cryptic. And dude, it happened so much. It was crazy. For a couple of weeks there, it was cryptic. And it was what? And I was okay, I'll call my podcast Cryptic Conversations, and so, that's one. And then the one with Florida, I'm getting so many about Florida now. It's getting so hard to deny. I have to go to Florida, I guess. That's my next chapter.
Right. Oh my God, that's so crazy. I do wonder though, is it possible that when something is at the forefront of a conversation that it becomes more noticeable? So it's something that's already there within us, but we just notice it more, as opposed to, so for example, I don't know, you've just had, something very significant, at work, some children, for example. I work with little kids. I'm a teacher. And so when I see little kids, I don't know, if I see a child on the street, or I hear the word child or anything related to that, it does kind of stand out to me more, because it is, something that I do for work. Do you think that's possible? Or yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think that's possible. For example, when I buy a new car or something, next thing I know, I start seeing that car on the street. I never noticed that car before, and it's like, oh, I get a new car, and then now I see that car all the time. So I think that is definitely a possibility, and so it does make me question, like, are these signs from, an external factor, or is it an internal knowing, like now you're more aware of it. But I don't know. If I would argue that for me, like my experience, it's been so extreme and so profound, like some of the things that I come across where it's like, is that really a coincidence, or is like the universe kind of like telling me to pursue that? I do believe that this reality is kind of like a mirror, so I don't know. I would argue that, sometimes it gets so unusual. Like, it's like, is that really a coincidence? I argue that no, like that's a sign, and I'm going to pursue it.
Love it. I love it. Guardian angels. Do you have guardian angels? Do you communicate with guardian angels?
Yeah, I believe I do. And I don't know who they are or what they are. But I do feel like I have someone or something that's been looking out for me. And like I said, I went through that darkness, before that one car accident. I was in another car accident, and my car, and I was sober, and I was driving in the rain, actually. I was driving in the rain, and my car flipped upside down on the freeway. I hydroplaned across the freeway, all the lanes, and I hit the center divider, and I flipped upside down. And that was another traumatic experience, and I was awake for the whole thing. And like, I came out of it, and I was like, all right, like checking my limbs, my arms, my legs. And I was like, all right, I'm alive. Okay. Like, now let me get my phone, and that's where my journey started, actually. And that was in 2016. That's where I started to think, you know what, for me to have such an intense car accident like that, and for me, I came out completely unscathed. I came out completely normal. And that's where I started to think, okay, I think maybe someone or something's looking out for me. Like, I have a mission here. I have a purpose here that I need to fulfill. Someone or something's looking out for me.
Wow. A lot of people who have these kind of like spiritual journeys and awakenings and experiences also talk about music. And I know you were talking about that, and like just art in general, be it writing, be it music, be it painting. Do you think that that's an important part of like a spiritual journey?
I don't know if it's an important part, but I do think, artistic people are more, I don't know, what is it, left brain, right brain, artistic people, whether it's, art, music, writing, whatever, that use that side of the brain. I forget which side, if it's left or right, but I think maybe those artsy kind of people are a little more open and a little more aware to these things. I always see it as kind of like science and spirituality, like, one way or the other. And so I would say maybe, these artsy people are kind of like they lean more towards that side of the brain, and they're more aware of these things.
Because I say this because, like, you were very much in like into the music field. So I just wonder whether you've had any sort of personal experiences with music and spirituality, or have they ever kind of like merged at any point in your journey?
That's actually kind of where I'm at now along my journey, and I really want to tie in spirituality and music, tie it in together. I'm leaving little clues and little symbolism and stuff in my songs and stuff, and I want people to pursue spirituality, their own version of it, if they feel called to it. For example, like the one song I just put out is called Love Portal, and when I put the song out, I'll leave like a little message there. So when they're listening to the song, next thing I know, they read that. Or, I have another song coming out called Paradise. The one before, and then a couple of months ago, I released a song called Intuitive Listening. So,
Ooh.
To kind of help people to listen to their intuition, and so that's kind of where I'm at. I'm trying to tie in spirituality and music together.
That's so crazy. And would you say that like your journey of like music has also evolved because of this or with this?
Oh yeah, definitely. Especially after the ayahuasca experience, like I said, I'm constantly growing and evolving. I feel like it's a new version of me every month. And I definitely, I'm definitely getting a lot of creative ideas on different things that I want to do. I don't really want to, talk about it right now, actually, because if someone, I've been getting a lot of people actually in the music scene kind of copying my style. So I'm going to kind of keep some things to myself and just kind of do it because, I don't want anybody to steal my ideas.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, I'm gonna wrap this interview up now with just the last few questions. For someone who is looking to open themselves up to having a spiritual awakening, I know you talked a little bit about ayahuasca. What are some of the things that we can do to sort of like, one, invite synchronicities into our lives? Because I do think that that's a really, really important part of the journey. And yeah, how can we listen to those or notice those synchronicities? What are the things that we can do to sort of get closer to our spiritual selves?
Yeah, so like I said, I put that song out called Intuitive Listening. We all have an intuition, whatever you want to call it, your intuition, your gut instinct. Listen to that, man. It's there for a reason, like it's there to protect you. And I think, we're evolving as a species, but, back in the time, that gut instinct protected you from harm, it was, So I think, listen to that gut instinct. You listen to your intuition, what feels right. Don't always go with the crowd, just because the crowd thinks one way doesn't mean they're right. There's this concept of groupthink, so I think, be your own individual, listen to your intuition, connect with nature, ask God or the universe for signs, ask for it, and they'll give it to you, so those are some ways I would say.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. That's really awesome. Final plugins. Tell us a little bit about your podcast. I would love our listeners to tune in. I'll be putting it into my description as well, but tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, so like I said, my DJ name is Tunez From The Crypt. So my podcast is called Cryptic Conversations. And so it's definitely got a kind of a blend of spirituality, conspiracy theories, UFO encounters, paranormal, that kind of a thing. But I'm definitely leaning towards spirituality at the moment. And so, like I said, I just want to help people learn about these different spirituality concepts. I think there's a renaissance happening right now, and there's a lot of people having these awakenings, and a lot of people that are, especially after the pandemic and stuff, I think people are tired of like the old way of things, and they're starting to question a little bit more. And so that's kind of the goal of the podcast, is to talk about some of these concepts that used to be kind of written off as crazy. That's kind of the goal of the podcast, is just open up people to spirituality.
Amazing. Daniel, thank you so much for being on this podcast and sharing your journey and this whole spiritual conversation. It's been so enlightening. If you enjoyed the episode and would like to help support the show, please follow and subscribe. You can rate and review your feedback on any of our platforms listed in the description. I'd like to recognize our guests who are vulnerable and open to share their life experiences with us. Thank you for showing us we're human. Also, a thank you to our team who worked so hard behind the scenes to make it happen.
Chris Trzynski, Stefan Menzel.
The show would be nothing without you. I'm Jenica, host and writer of the show, and you're listening to Multispective.